Okay, thank you for joining us for this Microloans in Developing Countries presentation. And this is my project for Global Online Academy, Advanced Topics in Economics, and it's made by me. So poverty is affecting about 1 billion people, according to some data that I collected. And one of the way to combat that poverty is through microloans, which is a small amount of loans to those who are not catered to by the traditional banking institutions. And there are two main reasons that the poor are not being catered to by the traditional banking institutions. And one of them is that they are extremely poor, and the banks don't really want to provide some loan to them because the banks think that they're going to default more likely. And they usually want to borrow a small amount of money, and it sometimes requires enormous amount of paperwork for the bank and for the borrower. There are also two reasons why we have to provide some microloan to people. The first reason is to for the poor to afford some necessary tools like seeds or some sickles, I don't know, to enhance means of making an income. Or they can start their own business. I'm going to refer to this starting business as income generating project in this presentation. So how did I get interested in this topic? I was always interested in various ways to alleviate economic distress, especially in developing countries, looking at all the poverty I see in India. And while being a delegate in NUN Club about 2 years ago, I got a chance to research on this topic and make some resolutions to improve the current practice of microloans and furthermore microfinance. And I was fascinated instantly because microloans was not only aimed at helping the poor and supporting them, but also at improving and promoting gender equality in developing countries, which is a serious issue in India, Pakistan, and most developing countries. Review of literature. So for this topic, I did some research and I found out these following points. So microloans are usually used for income generating projects or buying some necessary tools. However, I found out that some people use it in order to buy or satisfy their consumption needs, like buying food or getting some drinks. It could be alcohol. And does it really help the poor? Well, I also found out that some MFIs, microfinance institutions, charge extremely high interest rate. And all the problem that occurred in India was that some Indian farmer named Ramesh actually committed suicide because he could not pay back the loan that he got from MFIs. And how does it work in real life? I did a case study in Pakistan and South Africa. So in Pakistan, the main problem was that it was failing to empower women because there were some regulations and social rules. And I'm going to talk about that in depth later. In South Africa, there was some social tensions building up because too many people were getting microloans and too many people were starting their own small businesses. And that competition led to social tension. So this is my statement of thesis. I plan on analyzing problems associated with microloans and find some viable solutions that can help it to achieve its two main goals of supporting the poor and promoting economic growth and gender equality. So what are some of the benefits of microloans before we talk about challenges? So it can support the poor, as I mentioned earlier, and it can empower the woman because when women can become financially independent by starting their own business, we can really change the perception of the people. People will start thinking that, women can take the same role as men and they can do the same job. Why should there be a difference in treating both training female and male? then there can be a faster economic growth with these two things, because when more women are in the in workers' market, and when there are more production taking place because of increase in productivity, or more production taking place because there are more business, this will result in increase in SRAS, also referred to as short-run aggregate supply, and this usually represents the production in the short run, and this results in increase in real GDP in the short run. And in the long run, when the short-run aggregate supply keeps having that high level, the long-run aggregate supply also increases, and in the long run, there will be economic growth along with the microloans. Those are the benefits of microloans. And I'm going to talk about some main problems. So as I mentioned earlier, some people spend money for consumption spending, and when they do that, they will not have enough income to pay back the loan, and they'll start defaulting, and they start borrowing some more money from their relatives or MFIs, and that will result in more economic distress. And higher interest rate will start burdening the poor, because higher interest rate implies that those people have to make enough profit to pay back the loan and still make some profit, so that they can feed their children or themselves or herself. And the one problem is that it is not really raising women's social status, as in Pakistan. In Pakistan, I'm going to talk about Pakistan. In Pakistan, it is so male relatives use women to gain an access to loans. And what the problem is that those male relatives are usually don't have jobs or don't have enough money, and they don't pay back the money to a woman, and it's usually the woman who's responsible for paying back the loan. And there are some policies that prevent women from getting microloans. For example, in Pakistan, it requires the woman to have 2 male guarantors, and then the policy is that at least one male guarantors should be irrelevant to women. And in a conservative society, it's going to be really hard for a woman to find one male guarantor.
Could be a lawyer or something.
Yeah, he can be a business partner. Yes. And this is my economic analysis of some of the problems. So, when there are more consumption spending taking place in the economy, it can increase in aggregate demand, which is, you can say, is a good thing in the short run. But when it is almost supported by the short-run aggregate supply, this results in inflationary gap, making some illusion that economic growth is taking place. But at the end, when there's an increase in the cost, the short-run aggregate supply actually decreases and remains the same production. Yep. And the inflation rate also goes up with this increase in aggregate demand. Then there's a problem with high interest rate, and when people don't have enough money to spend on education or those necessary needs and wants, what will happen in long run? I will show you in the graph. So this type of economic growth can be depicted in production possibilities curve. The outward shift can take place usually by technological advancements or increased efficiency in production. And when people don't have enough money and cannot provide some enough funding for education, this can never take place. And there's a problem with women not being empowered. So, and this situation can be depicted in this production possibilities curve. India is currently in here because it's not using its human resources efficiently. They're not using both a male and female.
Right.
And this prevents the economy from achieving more production and then long-run aggregate supply increase. Yes, that's being prevented. This could have happened, but because women are not being empowered by microloans, this is not happening in the real world. And some of the possible solutions I came up with in order to improve microloans in developing countries. So the first solution in order to improve the implementation of microloan is to request a business plan prior to lending microloans to people. Why is this necessary? So the private investors usually reinforce or force the MFIs, microfinance institutions, to charge higher interest rate because there's a high perceived risk in microloans. And when there's a lower perceived risk, because they know that people are going to spend that microloan in order to support their income generating projects, they can actually persuade the private investor that they're going to charge a lower interest rate. And what it does is that from this investment curve, demand curve, you can see that when interest rate goes down, the quantity of investment actually goes up. And when there are more investments taking place, there will be better tools in the production. And in the short run, this increase in investment and increase in efficiency will result in more production in short run, and then long run at the same time, and later time. Some of the unintended consequences is that requesting the poor to submit those official plans may make it harder for the poor who's illiterate or does not have enough writing skill to fill out those plans, and it will actually make them harder to get microloans. And then, as you can see from the previous slide, it can result in deflation. Those are the two unintended consequences that can happen with this policy. And as I mentioned before, the illiterate will get hurt, and then those who need money immediately will get hurt. Like one's mother can be really sick, and one might really need microloans for that purpose. But because it is not considered as income generating project, that person might not get microloans. And however, the investors and the poor will really help because the investors will have a better return rate because less people will default, and this policy guarantees some safety value inside the microloan, and the poor will be helped because when this happens, when the circulation of money takes place in MFIs, then more people can get microloans. My second solution is getting rid of regulations that prevent women from getting microloans and check with some business plans for some different purposes. So when we get rid of the regulations, then more female entrepreneurs will be able to gain an access to microloans. And when we check business plans, we can prevent male relatives from misusing that microloan. And then what happens is that since more female entrepreneurs request microloans, this investment demand curve will shift to the right, and more quantity of investment will be made in the economy. And in the short run, when more investments get made and borrowed money gets used by female entrepreneurs, this can take place because more investment, as I mentioned before, can result in increase in production possibilities curve, and then when there is women empowerment taking place in the long run, both female and male will join the labor force, and then there will be more human resources getting used efficiently. Some of the unintended consequences is that when there are too many female entrepreneurs demanding microloans, there can be higher interest rate problem. And when women empowerment takes place, there will be more supply of labors, which is depicted in here. And then this may increase the quantity of labor, people employed in the economy. However, this will decrease the wage rate in the general overall economy. However, this will improve social status for all women in the society. So this, as I mentioned before, there will be a higher interest rate, possibly, and this may put more economic distress on the poor, who's getting the microloan. But however, the women entrepreneurs who really want to start their own business, and a woman who's currently being disheartened by their families or societies in participating in this economic activities or politics, raise some voice in the future. This is my last solution, and this is implementation of training programs by MFIs. So when there are training programs, one of the problems with microloans is that it assumes that everyone is an entrepreneur. And in reality, that's not really true because people don't know how to manage their own business. And in real life, those businesses supported by microloans fail in about 2 to 3 years. That's general case. However, when there's a training program, it is less likely for the business to close down easily because they will know how to make economic decisions in management and where to build their store, where to start their own business. And this will increase in short-run aggregate supply and also result in long-run aggregate supply. Yes, and this result in economic growth depicted here and improvement in the financial situation of MFIs. And the unintended consequence is that there can be too much burden on MFIs because they're already stretched, and those because they have to manage all different sorts of microfinance, like microinsurance, and they have to have someone who look at all the different accounting work. So this may put a lot of pressure in maintaining, because they have to maintain training program in addition to other main works. And then this may possibly dishearten women from getting microloans. One of the reasons that in conservative society like Pakistan or India or any other developing countries, putting them in a one room and then making them take the same class may make them feel uncomfortable. That's what I thought. This may not be true, but I thought they may happen. MFIs get hurt and MFIs get helped because MFIs they will start losing their management abilities and lose flexibility in case of some disasters. However, MFIs will help because they will have better financial situation, and the poor will be more likely to be successful in business. So I want to continue researching on this topic, even after graduating and even after this online course. And these are the 3 points that I want to work on. First one is operational risk of MFI. Second one is microloans causing social tensions, especially in South Africa. And investments now spent for infrastructure. And spent for microloans instead of being spent on infrastructure. It was one of the problems observed in South Africa too. I want to work on that later. Yes, so that's it. Thank you. Do you have any question?
What do you know about the Indian microloan meltdown of 2010? What happened there? Did you come across that?
2010. No, I researched on some of the Indian ones like Sewa for which is like microloans for women. But I didn't hear that much about it. I think I heard some lecture from Stanford about that. Maybe that was about like the farmer committing suicide.
Led to a wave of backlash.
And it made people doubt the effect of microloans if it's really necessary to have that.
At the beginning, you gave a definition of microloans. What is there the way of thinking about them in terms of the amount of money we're talking about, or how would you frame a microloan? Is it less than $1,000? Is it, what's the way to think about a microloan besides just being small?
It can be like small for us, but I think it can be like big for those poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard for us to define how much micro loan it can be.
Right. So more than what someone could afford on their own, but
Yeah. Because in dollars it will be like $5, $6, but in rupees it may mean a lot for those farmers.
There were a couple of questions I had around high interest rates. How high were the interest rates in some cases that you came across? Were they 20 or 30, or were we more talking like 80 or 90? I was wondering why they couldn't.
20 is in India is like normal, right? It's about like 16 to 70% in traditional banks, but some place were like 20 to 30%.
Okay.
And on the black market, do you have any idea what the interest rate is?
Black market, you mean like loan sharks? It's not really defined, but in Korean perspective, it can be like 30-40%.
Yeah, our driver actually.
Yeah.
Driver's dad has one out. And there was one more. I want to give you praise. I really liked your use of economics, short-term, aggregate, and long-term, talking about price pressures and no change in the end. As you mentioned, there might be an illusion, but then prices will rise and supply will go back to its original. So I really liked your use of economics. And you mentioned women being targeted several times as an explicit target and as maybe a benefit. What do you think of that? The targeting of women from microloans. How do you come out of this exploration, thinking about targeting women with microloans? Plus, minus, positive, negative?
Positive.
Because it seemed like they could be abused. They could be abused by the men in their lives.
Oh yes.
You could actually set them back by creating too much competition among women, say for the same service. Everyone buys a washing machine, and suddenly there's too much service of washing rather than hand washing. But you think good overall? What would you
I
say?
think good overall. About the woman being empowered.
Because
Because it can. It's somewhat related to human rights. However,
Okay.
it's also related to economic growth. Because I think that with 50% of the population working, I think real economic growth cannot take place.
what's that supply curve called again? The production. India's underneath it. What's that?
PPC graph,
PPC.
and then India is down there.
That's what you'd say,
Yeah.
right? That's what you mean, shift it more towards
Yeah.
both ways. Okay. Well, you really demonstrated your economic knowledge. I think there's more to learn, and I would love to learn more. And I looked up my family member, not related by blood, but who works in India microloans, and I tried to look him up, I couldn't find it. But I will make that connection.
Sure.
What
Yeah.
what course is this for?
This is for online course
For Goa.
for Go, advanced topics in economics.
And so do you have to videotape yourself presenting this?
I am right now.
Oh wow, that's so exciting!
And
Yes, it
there's
is.
Sorry to come into your party midway through.
No, because it was going to take 25 minutes.
Okay.
It was going to take too much time. And that's some of the reasons why I could not
Yeah.
go over all the topics.
Yeah.
Because it would take like 1 hour to talk about that.
Are we being recorded now?
Yes.
So,
Congratulations.
Jungmin said this was a very challenging course after